stopped at the Dollar General because that was one of the places I went to a lot whenever I'd get like $5 or something just from doing chores around the house. I saw just the cheapest hockey sticks you could find. I'm talking like if you just hit it like against the concrete like that, it would break. But I got that because I thought it was really cool and just kind of fell in love with it from there.
Welcome into another great week, another great conversation here on Cousins Conversations. I have another KU alum with me. We love the Jayhawks on this program, Gabe Daniel. He is the business development and broadcast coordinator for the Fayetteville Marksmen in the SPHL. That is hockey for people who don't know. Gabe, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me and letting me be the second SPHL broadcaster here on the show.
Hey, back-to-back weeks. That was unintentional, but it did happen that way. So let's get started with that. Let's get into the road of how you got to this position and then kind of explain what that title is, because it's not only broadcast coordinator, but you have a business element to it as well.
Yeah, so it kind of started last year, like when I was in Tulsa. I worked for the junior team, which is like the 16 to 20-year-olds, like developing before mostly college in the league they were in, the NA3HL. And I was able to do a couple of broadcasts with their ECHL program. Most of them were color, but I was able to do play-by-play for one game. And then kind of after that game, like I knew I had it and I was ready to make that jump. So kind of towards like the end of the NA3 season, I was putting feelers out for teams. And then obviously the opening here, and once I got the offer, I accepted it. And now I'm about 19 and a half hours away from home, just doing what I love. But in terms of the role, like the business development, that's more of our corporate activation. So making sure that we're upholding our end of like contract agreements with sponsors, and then obviously the play-by-play and media relations aspect of it as well.
Having to balance both of those things, what goes into that other side of the role other than just calling the games itself?
Yeah, so just the press releases for player transactions, and then obviously the post-game write-ups, game notes I kind of do on my own. I haven't gotten much of an opportunity to build a good enough packet yet, so I just do spotting boards that I share with the other broadcasters when they come in, but it's pretty much like the standard broadcast media relations. I feel like just the more important end of my job is like that business development.
What have you learned about just being in that role, having to work with other people now on top of focusing on yourself and your work?
You know, it gave me a good start to it when I was in Tulsa, having to be like account executive for my 9 to 5. So I was focused on ticket sales on the non-game day stuff. So that's kind of able to help out a little bit, but it's a lot different here just because it's not as much like the trying to buy and sell single game tickets like every game. It's trying to really pitch some of our upcoming events we have with our $10 ticket night here this Saturday. And then we're doing a broom ball tournament late March. So trying to sell those, and then obviously get in the groove of getting to know our corporate partners and also make sure that all of our activations are being upheld with them.
And a strategic communication focus in the KUJ school. There's two focuses for people who don't know how the J school works. You have the news and info side and the Stratcom side, which is more of the advertising and relations things that Gabe is talking about. Having the background in that, Gabe, what did you take from what you learned through the Stratcom program and you've used it now?
So I started out on the news and information track actually, and kind of around junior year, I realized I wanted to make the switch just because I felt like I was getting more of a news reporter vibe from it when that's not where my heart was. So I wanted to switch into something that would help out the office role a little bit more. And I think it certainly helped in terms of just, you know, some marketing stuff, helping bring in a couple of ideas here and there. And also just the writing aspect has really helped out as well with the press releases.
What have you learned about what important information that you have to put into these press releases? Because I read some of these press releases, I get some from like SIDs or some from teams or whatever, and it's just there's a lot of information to digest and take in. So from that aspect of things, what do you know what to put in there and how you comprise that together?
I try to keep it short and simple. You don't want the people that would be reading those to get the scrolling fatigue from it. But let's say it's like a player transaction. What I'll do is, like, for example, if there's a trade, I'll mention like what we get in exchange first, who we're giving up, and then kind of once I do like that intro to the press release, I'll talk about how that player has done so far this season for the team he's coming from. If he has played pro like previously in a prior season, I'll mention that really quick, and then I'll dive into the player we're giving up, what they did for us, and then like I'll try to pitch like our next game, like when we're in action next.
I see on the team's Facebook, Fayetteville Marksmen's Facebook, you're also doing post-game interviews with the coach, and you're doing that aspect of things, asking questions, getting the post-game out, recapping the game. What have you done with building relationships and how that's evolved over time with you talking to the coach all the time?
Yeah, no, I think the trust with the coach is one of the biggest things. And when I was with the Oilers in the ECHL, we were able to go to the league meetings in Vegas, especially my first year. And during the broadcaster roundtable, that was one of the meetings there. I was able to be a part of that. And we had the radio voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets talking to us, and he really emphasized that just the relationship with the coach is one of the most important parts of the job. And I think just being able to, get to know him and being able to talk to him a little bit more, it helps build the pregame interview I do with him that's audio only. And that has really helped out a lot more with just, the pregame show I do before broadcast. And then that also kind of helps with the post-game interview as well, just because the more I'm interviewing him, the easier it gets with coming up with, what I can and can't ask and that kind of thing.
When it comes to calling the games, you've had a lot of experience with hockey. You mentioned the Tulsa Oilers and the ECHL, and then you also started broadcasting even before that with KU club hockey, and then even younger than that. You told me 13 is when you started calling hockey games, or sophomore year of high school is when you told me you started calling games. Where did that passion for hockey start for you?
So, like, in terms of the sport itself, right around fifth grade, it's the end of the school year. Teachers have nothing else to do. Actually, it was into fourth grade. Teachers have nothing else to do except put on movies at the end of the year. And lucky enough, Mighty Ducks is one of them. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then riding my bike around town, Mulvane, Kansas, very small town. I stopped at the Dollar General because that was one of the places I went to a lot whenever I'd get like $5 or something just from doing chores around the house. I saw just the cheapest hockey sticks you could find. I'm talking like if you just hit it like against the concrete like that, it would break. But I got that because I thought it was really cool and just kind of fell in love with it from there. And then obviously had some pretty monumental changes happen around that same time period. So I kind of just really leaned in the sport. And then right around like eighth grade, I knew I wanted to go into radio. I didn't know what all that entailed. But then like freshman year, I caught myself announcing games as I was playing NHL on the Xbox back when I was an Xbox user. And then that's kind of when I wanted to give it a try. So we had another junior hockey team back in Wichita. They're now defunct, but I reached out to the head coach and general manager because he kind of took the reins on everything when it came to staffing. And I was just like, hey, like I would love to get this a try. And he's like, oh, like maybe next year. Well, next year's rolling around. It's nearing their home opener. And he asked if I still wanted to do it. And the rest is history from there.
Awesome. That's a great story. Way to advocate for yourself and get yourself in the door somewhere. Since then, how have you seen yourself evolve? Because you've seen like now a couple different levels of hockey.
Yeah, no, it's certainly kind of just building from the ground up. I mean, obviously, when I was 14 or 15, I kind of didn't know what exactly I was doing. And then I get out to Kansas and like the University of Kansas, rather. I've been in Wichita like all my life. So, but once I got out to KU, I kind of had to build it up myself, like in terms of just the equipment and everything. So just from there, it was a challenge, but a huge shout out to Cal Butcher, who always helped with making sure I had the necessary equipment. I checked it out from him a lot down there in the studio, and then just kind of build it from scratch there. I had Andrew Cadle, the former graphic designer for the club, make me a score bug. I finally learned how to implement that on an OBS, and it was kind of just trial by fire my sophomore year at Kansas, because that's the first year we had hockey when I got there, just because my freshman year was COVID and they didn't have a season. So sophomore year was really rough. I ended up having to get a new MacBook because on the MacBook Air, it looked like it was just a PowerPoint with all the broadcasts. So once I upgraded to the MacBook Pro, it was better quality. And then by the time it was my senior year, I kind of had like a pretty set rhythm. We were starting to implement interviews into those broadcasts as well. So I've kind of seen it grow that way. And then just once I left KU for Tulsa, like I kind of pretty much had the craft there. Equipment was a lot easier. We actually had interns from Tulsa Tech help out with like the NA3 broadcast. So that made my life a lot easier. And then getting out here, all the equipment was already here, but it was just a matter of learning the new setup. And I think I have it figured out here. So
shout out to Cal. Cal's got his hands in everything over at KU, man.
Yeah, no, I couldn't be more thankful for him. I mean, he's seen both the best and the worst out of me when I gave the news and info side a try, and then still didn't treat me any different once I made that switch over to the Stratcom side, and was still always willing to help and provide feedback, and that feedback being what I needed to hear and not what I wanted to hear. And I forever thankful for that here to this day.
When I was there I graduated in 2018, KU club hockey was just evolving. They were traveling all the way to Independence, Missouri to play their games. And we broadcasted one of the games against Missouri. How have you seen that team evolve over time to the fact where you were then calling games for them, and they've grown into what they've grown into?
Yeah, no, when you were calling those games, they were quite the wagon, especially the 2018-19 and the 2019-20 season. That's where I kind of started to get on board with them in that 19-20 season. And then obviously it was really tough getting back into things my sophomore year, because you have like a year where there's no games being played. And then you kind of have to start from scratch. The returning players you had the last time they had game action, they were either freshmen or sophomores, and they haven't played competitive hockey in well over a year. And when they were getting that reps, they were kind of at the bottom of the lineup, not because they were bad, but because they were younger. You also had guys like Dane Johnson, Brad Glass, Dawson Engel, Johan Steen, and plenty of others that were just dominant. And losing all of those guys, not having a season, and then having to jump right back into it really made it tough. So I kind of saw it from, I guess, darker days with the younger team. You bring in a good core and then you return them. My junior year went a little bit better, except for that border showdown game where Missouri did beat us. I don't want to talk about the final score in that one.
Yeah, we don't need to mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't like saying nice things about that school. So, but senior year, it was just complete 180 with, the freshman class we had brought in, a lot of talent there. And they even made it to the championship game of the conference playoffs, where it was pretty much a barn burner against Missouri. They still beat us pretty good, but we got them back for my senior night, which was also like my 200th broadcast ever. because like I counted everything from high school building me up to there. That was my 200th game. I think we beat them 5-3, and it was a packed Cable Dahmer arena, and it was a lot of fun. But one thing that I do miss a lot is just calling those games, especially for some of the other guys that graduated shortly after I did. I wasn't able to call their games, but also seeing the team have a brand new home in Overland Park, Kansas, so a lot closer. I was really jealous to see that, especially with about maybe 20 minutes less of a drive.
That is nice. Yeah, Overland Park, nice and close, not too far away. You mentioned you're keeping track of your broadcasts. How do you do that?
So I just remembered I did 90 games back in Wichita before I went to KU, and then I actually went back by hand and counted. I'm like, well, how many is this going to be? And then I picked up some like freelance games here and there whenever KU hockey would play in a tournament here and there. And then obviously with the student radio station, I counted those in as well. So just tracking it by that. And then like once I graduated, I felt like it kind of started back over once it was actual real world experience.
Nice. That's a lot of like when you think about how many games you've called, like what comes to mind for that? Because you're saying like over 200 and you're in college for that. I mean, that's a lot of games right there.
Yeah, no, I just want to keep doing 200 more. And then once I hit that next milestone, I want to do hundreds more after that.
There you go. That's what we love to see. And keeping at it. What has been the reception for you going to Fayetteville?
Big culture shock. I mean, just being from the Midwest my entire life, now to move 19 and a half hours away from home, it was a really big challenge. I still don't know too many people outside of the Marksmen or Marksmen games out here. It's really fun to have a cookout here. I know a lot of people in the Midwest probably aren't as familiar with that, but I think the biggest jump was just how far away I am from home. But I mean, once I'm at the rink, I kind of check that out a little bit. I'm able to lock in on calling hockey. I mean, I've done it for so long. I had a few pro games under my belt, like before coming out here. So like, I know I'm more than capable of it. Like another new thing that I took on too is the post-game jersey auctions. I will call those as well. Didn't have any auctioneer experience. Sometimes it's still a little rough, but I'm still trying to get the hang of that as well.
How are you learning to do that?
Just really focused on listening to how they did it in Tulsa, just because the broadcasters there would also handle the jersey auction. So just really asking them all kinds of questions about the way they did things while I was there, and really trying to hone in and pay attention to like the detail of the way they did things certainly helped, because I try to replicate the same cadence they did with that kind of stuff.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, it is and isn't. It kind of depends on, like how games go, just because you're kind of relying on the fans to interact and engage with you.
And they do a lot of custom jerseys and things like that?
Yeah, no, they do a lot of them out here, and it's really impressive. Sometimes I'm not the biggest fan just with how numbers are, but the jerseys.
I was going to say, yeah, the numbers are
remarkable.
Sometimes it gets a little rough, yeah.
Especially with how high up you are. That's one of the things where you really appreciate the ability to pick up on player tendencies and the way they skate, so you're able to just be able to know who has the puck without having to look at the number.
What's gotten you used to the flow of hockey and the pace of hockey? Because the higher that you go, the faster the sport gets, the more line changes there are. You were talking about how it's hard to see numbers. How have you adapted to the flow over time?
That's one I don't really know if I kind of have the answer to. I've kind of just been used to the flow of the game just from, starting the broadcast thing out when I was 14, learning it on the fly, and also just having watched hockey for so long. It gets really easy. And I think also just watching NHL games and trying to listen to those broadcasters, it's certainly helped out just because you're able to learn something from them as well.
What's an NHL broadcaster you listen to a lot?
Let's see. For Regional, I really do admire and look up to Chris Kerber. I mean, I had the chance to job shadow him when I was in high school, but like putting bias aside for not my favorite team, I would say Steve Goldstein with the Florida Panthers. He's one I really enjoy listening to at the national level. I really enjoy the way that Kenny Albert calls the games back in the day, Doc Emmerich. So just
Oh yeah.
really picking up on a lot of different broadcasters' tendencies. And then here and there, when I have the chance, my good friend John Weideman with the radio voice of the Chicago Blackhawks, I'll try to tune in to some of his. He's also a KU alum, and I actually got to meet him the night I did that Blues job shadow, and I had the KU School of Journalism drawstring because that was shortly after I took a visit there. So I used that bag just to carry around like a notebook up in the Media Robe Enterprise Center. He saw the backpack, stopped and talked to me and really took me under his wing because I was going to be a Jayhawk. And that's just one of the really cool things.
Anytime you see a Jayhawk, you just say Rock Chalk and you hear Jayhawk back. That's what we do.
Well, sometimes some of them will yell back Rock Chalk, but the thought is there.
Exactly. That's cool though. I didn't know that he was a KU alum. I'll have to try to hit him up myself. Being a Blackhawks fan out here. Cool story. So you're a Blues fan then?
Yes, I am. Just the city of St. Louis is something very near and dear to my heart. So just anything St. Louis sports, I will definitely pick up on.
Do you embrace, I guess, because more now that the Red Wings are in the Eastern Conference, that Blues and Blackhawks rivalry is a little more now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look away from it in terms of, who works for the Blackhawks because John's a great friend of mine. But beyond that, yeah, I do enjoy being able to buy into that rivalry.
It's a great one. It's a great one. And we over the years too, because you had Winter Classics playing together and a lot of fun games. When it comes to, you've said, you've had all these games and you just watch so much hockey, you just kind of know what's going to happen. What are some of the things that people say when they come up to you? Do they enjoy your calls? Do they want to, they're like, oh my gosh, it's Gabe Daniel,
No, I haven't had that so much here in Fayetteville yet. I do remember kind of getting called out on like one of the groups about me having a rule mixed up here in the SPHL. So a shootout is best of 5 in this league. Most of the other leagues and situations where I've called, it's been a best of 3. So just by like muscle memory on the broadcast, I said it'll be best of 3 shootout. And I said that for 2 nights in a row because the Marksmen were playing the Havoc, Huntsville's team, and it went into overtime both nights. And I mentioned, like, if no one scores, best of 3 shootout. I got called out. And then I commented on the post just saying like, hey, like that's on me. Thanks for catching that. It won't happen again. And then I had a few fans like chime back in saying that like they're glad I'm here in Fayetteville, like mistakes happen. So kind of that, but I haven't had like anyone necessarily notice me here in public.
You'll get to that point. You'll get there, and then you'll feel more better about yourself.
Yeah. I'll feel like the man once that happens. I'm just excited to be a part of it here just because they are truly building something special. And it's really fun just because our ownership group here also owns the Macon Mayhem. So being able to work very closely with that staff and just some of the other broadcasters in the league, I've made a lot of really good connections out here so far, and it's just been an absolute blast.
It's a grind of a league. I mean, like I said, I'm in the Quad Cities here. I see the Storm games. They're playing 3 games in a weekend sometimes. Sometimes they're going from here to Peoria down to the south where you are. It's just such a grind of a league. How have you seen this league and just kind of how that affects things with just the grind of it?
I think it's very similar to Big 12 basketball where it's any given night, anyone can win. I mean, with the Marksmen, I've seen them like they're in last place right now, but with the way they've been playing as of late, they took a game away from Pensacola, one of the top teams in the league. They were able to get 3 out of 4 points against Huntsville the weekend prior. So it's any given night. And I mean, just the way where Quad City kind of started out, like a rough start for them, and then they've been able to catch a pretty good streak and jump up into the standings. It really, you can't rule a team out here early on. And then even last year, just looking back at how that season went, you had Knoxville and Evansville make it into the President's Cup finals and the playoffs, where those were two teams a lot of people had written off early on.
And like the standings are so close too. Like you look at it, and yes, the Marksmen are in last place, but they're only like 6 points out of the playoffs. Like,
so they are.
Yeah,
I believe it's 2 points out of the playoffs.
Yeah, 2 points. Yes,
games in hand to Birmingham, who we play this week, and so that'll be a really huge matchup. We've had their number earlier in the season, but we'll have to see if that stays the same with a lot of the changes made here on the roster.
With play-by-play, I see you posting about being out there doing play-by-play, and social media. I mean, I asked Grant Delsham this last week, who calls the Quad City Storm games. How he presents the game, and how he prepares for the game. So what's kind of your prep process?
I try to do the spotting boards for both teams. I try to go into as much detail as I can, and then I'll look at some of their recent trends. I'll also include that on the spotting boards. And then whenever there is a traveling broadcaster, I'm able to sit and talk with them in person about how things are going to go. For example, with Birmingham not traveling, their broadcaster, I will give a phone call to their home-only guy on the day of the game just to run through pronunciation, see if there's like anything key-wise I should pick up. I mean, it's the same thing I did with Huntsville. Jacob Murphy, a great guy. It's his first year here in the league too, but I was able to sit down and talk with him. I was able to get some, key pointers, and I try to just, talk with people on the side of the other team, especially when they're tuning into my broadcast. I don't want them to think that I'm too much of a homer. Obviously, I am paid by the Marksmen, so I'm going to sound more excited for good things that happen to the Marksmen. I'm going to sound a little monotone for the unfortunate things that happen, but I try to keep it right down the middle beyond that.
Where with this hockey, I mean, you knew from a young age this is what you wanted to do. Now you're doing it. Where does the future take this for you, you think?
I don't know too much about what the future is going to hold for me. I just want to kind of focus on Fayetteville here. I'm just thankful for the opportunity to get to call pro hockey. It's a dream of mine I've had for over a third of my life. So just being here is a privilege, but at some point in my career, I'd like to at least move up to the ECHL, just because I know it's really hard to get from the ECHL to the AHL and higher.
And you also were involved with KJHK as well at Kansas too. So you called a bunch of different sports as well. How do calling other sports kind of factor into, now focusing on one?
Yeah, no, it makes me more versatile, and I really try to hone in on that. Onto that, just from like a resume standpoint. That way, they know I'm not just a one-trick pony. Heading into KJHK, I didn't know a lick of basketball, and within a couple of months of being on campus, I'm calling games in Allen Fieldhouse from that media row next to Lane Gillespie and a bunch of cardboard cutouts in the stands. So that was really fun, and they were great on trying to get me up to full speed with that. I know it's a cardinal sin to go into Kansas not knowing basketball or the basketball history, but like I had my eyes set on hockey and building that up. But once that opportunity wasn't there, I kind of looked elsewhere just so I was able to kind of stay red hot on the mic.
And whatever you can do. I mean, you gotta stay relevant out here. You gotta do what you gotta do. And it's cool though. It's still a cool experience just to be in Allen Fieldhouse and experience all that. I mean, that's just some top level stuff that not a lot of people get to experience anyway. So you were still part of that.
Yeah, and just being able to experience it as in the student section, to a radio broadcaster, to a writer with the UDK. It's been a lot of fun, especially getting to see thousands of students start to rip up the articles I wrote before tip-off.
Yeah, that's a great tradition there for KU. So yeah, so you did KJHK, you did UDK. So you've used both of your experiences in college now professionally. So what have you, as far as doing those things professionally now, what do you think back on from those experiences that you've now taken into having to do that in both of your roles now?
I just look back and I'm thankful. I mean, I was able to get opportunities that a lot of kids dream of. And that's something I made sure I wasn't going to take for granted, just because it's something really special. And even though like some of that stuff won't get used into my reels for jobs moving forward, I'm able to look back and be like, hey, I called that. So David McCormick's 3-pointer against TCU, I remember being on the call for that one. I remember getting to be on the mic for a few Chris Tehan 3-pointers, being able to interview Chris Tehan about a article during March Madness about the walk-ons and their role. So being able to just find a different storyline that not a lot of people would have thought about was really special as well.
Oh yeah, Chris Tehan, legend. And also, so you were there for the national championship then?
I wasn't in the building for the championship. With the way they rotated who was traveling and who wasn't, I was fortunate enough. I got to go to the first and second round in Fort Worth. So the game I was on the mic for was against Creighton. That was a lot of fun. And then my senior year, I was able to go to Salt Lake City when the team unfortunately got destroyed by Gonzaga. But it's a lot of fun and just memories I'll be able to cherish forever.
At least you were there when the national championship happened. My senior year in 2018, we just went to the Final Four and then lost to the Nova Knicks out here. So like to the Jalen Brunson and Archie Diacono and Mikal Bridges team. So at least you got to experience that. So
yeah, getting to experience the national championship while on Mass Street is something I'm going to remember forever as well.
Yeah, a lot of memories to carry with you as well. And going forward here, you say you're just staying in the moment and focusing on that. But what's the aspirations for you? What's your ultimate goal?
You know, I think if I had to pick an absolute dream, it would either be NHL or let's say someday that Kansas does get a D1 hockey team, actual NCAA D1 team. I would love to, fly back to the nest and have the original voice come back. But I just want to call hockey games and, make a sustainable income doing that. So I'm really happy with where I'm at right now and looking to just grow as much as I can here.
You know what you were doing from a young age, you're doing it now and doing it well and doing it at different levels and building up that experience. And we know you're all going to get there. Everybody watching this knows you're going to get there just because you have the right mindset. Where can people follow you and follow along with your hockey broadcast journey?
Yeah, so I actually have an Instagram account separate that is just like broadcast stuff. It's G Daniel PXP. And then also on Twitter, I've been trying to incorporate some more stuff as well. G Daniel _74 is where some of my media stuff here with the Marksmen will go. And then I'm trying to get better at posting some of my clips on TikTok. I think that one is gdaniel.74. So pretty much gdaniel74. You can just type it in and I'm sure it'll pop up.
Lots of way to see Gabe's work out there. And if he ever comes to the Quad Cities, to the Vibrant Arena, you will have a seat. And I will say hello and I will show you a good time.
Awesome. Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Gabe. Appreciate you hanging out with me here on Cousins Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me.